Hello, Bethany Christian Church. This is Pastor Greg. It is good to see you. Doing something a little different this week since we had a Gideon speaker in our service today. I thought I would do a special devotional or sermonette for us to use because we've been posting each week the sermon from our service for the next week's time for those of you on Facebook and YouTube and those who access it in our website, which is bccodessa.org. So I thought I'd just take this time. I'm going to share a lesson that I had shared with our youth, and it's kind of been resounding with me a little bit lately, and so we're going to be looking at that. So if you have a moment, grab your Bible. It's going to be in Genesis 11, the first book in the Bible, Genesis chapter 11, verses 1 through 4. But I want to take this opportunity just to bring for a pause to kind of bring some of you up to date. We have many of our congregation that are still at home, not feeling comfortable, coming to church and all that, and we want to encourage you to do what you feel comfortable with. But I kind of want to let you know kind of what we're doing up at the church. As you know, well, hopefully you know, we have been meeting in the fellowship hall where we had set it up for worship service, where we can use the white plastic chairs because they are easier to disinfect. We've been disinfecting them with a bleach and water solution each and every time. And actually here just recently, boy, it took a lot of work. I mean, it would take a lot of work each week to wash those 125 chairs that between the Sunday school classes and the fellowship hall to get them ready, and then to wipe down everything else and to clean the bathrooms and all of that. But we've recently purchased a fogger, a chemical fogger, and we have been using a chemical. It's the same one that ECISD has been using to disinfect their facilities. And that's been working really well for us, and it's actually saved some time. We still wipe down the main surfaces and all that, so that we provide a good disinfected environment. And for the most part, the building doesn't get used that much during the week anymore. So for especially the fellowship hall, it's only used once a week, so that gives a kind of a sitting time in which any possible bacteria or virus or anything like that has plenty of time to die off. And so just kind of want to let you know of some of those safety features that we've been doing. We've also instituted, we have one of those thermometers that doesn't touch, it reads off of your forehead. And so everybody who comes into our service has done that. I had somebody ask me the other day, they go, well, what would happen if I had a high temperature? Would you send me home? Surely not. And I was like, well, yeah, that's what the whole procedure is to make sure that you're not coming in here with the temperature and that everybody's protected. So yeah, I guess I would send you home. And we kind of laughed about it, but that's the main part of that procedure is to help protect you and me and all of those that attend. We also, we've been doing the two-part communion where the bread and all is, the bread is in the lower cup and the juice is in the upper cup. And Judy and I, we glove up and we mask up when we serve that communion, and we're the only ones who touch it. We hand it to the individuals. That way it's probably the safest way. And we've been meeting like this with these procedures since May 24th, and fortunately we haven't had any cases that we haven't had any COVID cases in our church body, and we haven't had any anything that could be directly attributed to us. So I kind of think that you take that as an endorsement that we are doing pretty well with our disinfecting procedures. We are hoping with our new fogger, we've used it 2 or 3 times, and it is safe for upholstery, and we've used it on the pews out in the hall, and it's done well. To implement that and using that in our sanctuary, we're in the process of having to clean the sanctuary. It hasn't been used since March, and we don't have our custodians with us. There are several cuts that we had to do because obviously with COVID and everything, our contribution level has fallen, but So we've made some cuts, and so far we're living within our means, as my mom used to say. And so we're cleaning up that because we're hoping to be back into our sanctuary the first Sunday of Advent, which will be the last Sunday in November, okay? So that we can celebrate Christmas, we can have our Christmas decorations, and we can start kind of getting back. Now we'll have areas that are marked off that can be seated in and social distanced, and then we'll still be using the mask and of course the thermometer and all. But I just kind of wanted to let you know so that if you do decide to come and visit, you'd kind of be aware it's not like it used to be. Okay, our order of worship's not like it used to be. We don't give out bulletins and right now, and so just be aware. Now it will be like it always used to be, in that the word of God will be proclaimed. It will be like it always used to be, in that people will be glad to see you and will love to see you, and we'll social distance from you, but we'll in our minds and in our hearts we'll give you a hug. And so we will be here when you feel comfortable and you are ready to come back and join us. And we are excited that we have this new side of Bethany as far as our virtual side, and that you're participating in with our sermons and those sort of things being online. So with that said, I just thought I'd bring you up to date, let you know what's going on. So it's not necessarily a rude awakening when you do come. So, but we were looking at Genesis 11, 1 through 4 the other night with our youth. And it's one of my favorite stories. It's one of the oldest stories one of the oldest occurrences in the Old Testament. Happens right after the Noah deal, and this is the story. Many of you hear this story called the Tower of Babel. Okay, the Tower of Babel. So I want to read that passage. We're going to start with Genesis 11. Now the whole earth had one language and the same words. And as people migrated from the east, they found a plain in the land of Shinar and settled there. And they said to one another, "Come, let us make bricks and burn them thoroughly." And they had brick for stone and bitumen for mortar. And they said, "Come, let us build ourselves a city and a tower with its top to the heavens, and let us make a name for ourselves, lest we be dispersed all over the face of the whole earth." And the Lord came down to see the city and the tower in which the children of man had built. Okay, in this story, there's a few things that we want to contextualize. If you remember, after the Noah thing, Noah and his family came out of the ark, and all the animals came out of the ark, and they were given one purpose. They were given the purpose of going and replenishing the earth, going and spreading throughout the earth and repopulating it. And so we come to this passage that evidently these people came and they decided, no, let's not replenish the earth. Let us stay here. Let us not be spread all over the place. And it's kind of unique. I've always been fascinated with this story because of that first part that says they had one language and they same words. They had one language. Now, you say, well, same words is the same thing as language. No, not exactly. You and I both live in and speak English, but if you do like me and you hang around the youth, you realize they have some special words. They have their own language that I don't understand the words to, or other people, if you travel from one part of our country to another part of our country, the way we say things here in the South might be different than the way they say them back east or in the West. They have different words. They have regional words. They have things, dialects and those sort of things, all these nuances to language. It's very fascinating to me. And so I've always been curious about this, because this was a time in which, wouldn't it have been, I read this and I'm like, what's so bad with what they were doing? They had one language. Wouldn't it be great to have one language? We get in so many fights about language and about, well, if you're in America, you need to speak American. Or if you're in I'm thankful that as I traveled through the world and other parts of the country, that they didn't insist on. I went to Norway once, and I was glad. I could hardly read Norwegian. They've got like 28 letters in the alphabet, not just 26. And so I'm glad they didn't insist that I speak Norwegian when I ordered an 8. And I was glad they had things in English. And so, but it would have been a heck of a lot more convenient if we all had the same language and we all understood everything. Communication would be better, even with one language. Sometimes I will say things and people will hear it totally different than what I meant it. Okay, they will hear it. They didn't hear it the same way. I didn't communicate it well, or they heard it through things, and that wasn't the case. These people were unified in language and all, and so they decided, hey, look at this place. Let's make bricks. And here's the key thing that we need to see. It says that they said, let us build a tower and make a name for ourselves so that we will not be spread across the earth. Okay, let us make a name for ourselves. Let's make ourselves famous. Let's build this tower. And really, some translations talk about the tower. Let's build this tower into the heavens. Let's build this tower to the place of God. And you get the feeling in examining this text and examining the idea that they were pursuing on making themselves number one. And that's a pursuit that a lot of people have today. A lot of people pursue fame and fortune, and they want to be famous, even if it is only to be viral, to be famous for 30 seconds because you produce a video or something like that. All sorts of people want to be known. They want to be, and in a way, they want their moments of fame. And in a way, they want to build their tower, build themselves up greater than anybody else. Basically, they want to take the place of God in their life. They wanted to build a tower to the heavens to show the world that they could do anything. Okay? And so some of the life lessons that I shared with the youth from this passage is, number one, don't try to be famous. Don't try to be famous. You look at this lesson, let's continue on with scripture reading, and let's see how God reacts to this. Number one, they're in direct disobedience to God in that he told them to replenish the earth, and they were not. They're in direct disobedience to God in that they want to make themselves equal to God, and yet God is God and we are not. Okay, there's a hierarchy. God is above us and we are below. Okay. And so we see here in verse 5, and the Lord came down to see the city and the tower which the children of man had built. And the Lord said, behold, they are one people and they have one language, and and this is only the beginning of what they will do. Look, they're sinning. Remember, this is after the flood event, after God had wiped out the world because of flood. And he had given them the promise that he would never wipe out the entire world again because of with flood water. Okay, but they had gotten to where they were so sinful that God had to do something. And here, God is diagnosing that they're beginning to do the same thing. This is just the beginning. If they can do this, then nothing that they purpose to do will be impossible for them. This is a statement that God is saying, nothing that in their evil hearts will they not accomplish. No, there will not be anything so horrible and so sinful that they won't be able to do. Okay, and we look around ourselves in the world in which we live, and we say, yeah, man has such an evil has a sinful bent, and there's man is selling man into slavery. Man is oppressing man based on color and race and socioeconomic deal. Men are abusing children. They're selling children into as sex slaves. There is nothing horrible, so horrible, that man won't accomplish it. And that's what God is saying. He's saying, look, see, I'm reminded of the old line from Mayberry and Barney Fife going, Andy, we got to nip this in the bud. Andy, we got to nip this in the bud. And you kind of hear God saying, we've got to nip this in the bud before it gets a little too far too quickly. Okay. Now, God had a plan for our salvation through Jesus Christ. Okay. But it wasn't that time yet. And you read, and as Christmas season is coming up, you read that it says, and in the fullness of time, God sent his son. Okay. There's a timing to everything. Well, this wasn't quite the time. So what God decided to do, he said, come, let us go down there and confuse their language so that they may not understand one another's speech. So the Lord dispersed them from there to cover the face of the earth, and they left off building the city. They left off building this great thing that they were going to do, that they was going to prove how great they were, and God decided, well, I'll nip that in the bud, and I will cause a little confusion based on language. And once it caused confusion, what did it happen? What happened? They dispersed themselves like they should have done to start with, because that was God's command. They dispersed themselves across the face of the earth, and they left off their claim of fame. They left off their plan of glorious, because see, they didn't count the cost. You know, Bible says if you're going to build a tower, you need to sit down and count the cost. They didn't count the cost of what building that tower was going to be. They didn't count the cost that that tower was a tower of disobedience. They didn't count the cost of what it would mean to them. And so as I shared these things with our youth, and I'm sharing them with you now, I want to say, even in your own life, let's not be building our towers of Babel. Let us not be building our claim to fame. Let us not make our career more important than anything else or anybody else. Let us not make our hobby more important than anybody else, our family or anything else. Let's not work so hard to be famous. Just be humble. Just be who you are, who God created you to be. And because God examines our inward motives. God examined their inward motives. Their motives were to become like God. See, that's at the heart of sin, is when we say, I will be God in my life, and I will decide what I do and what I don't do, and you can't tell me otherwise. Well, that's the heart of sin. That's the definition of sin, when you don't worry about how your actions affect anybody else, how your actions affect your relationship with God. You're going to do what you're going to do. Okay, and that's the heart of sin. God examines that. God examines your heart. Is your heart selfish, inward focused, or is your heart outward focused? And as a follower of Christ, our heart needs to be Christ focused. And in our heart being Christ focused, should automatically be, unfortunately sometimes we're not, we should automatically be outward focused. It is possible, though, to do something good. You know, I've always read this story, and I said, what's so wrong with building a tower? I worked for a Bank of America, and the last building I worked in downtown Dallas was the 71-story Bank of America Plaza building. You know, the one that's in the green neon. The highest I've ever been is on the 70th floor of that building, and that's a great building. It was probably bigger than this tower that was built, but something you can spend a lot of effort doing something that's good. Having a good career, being successful is not bad. Okay, having money is not bad. Okay, but examine your motives. If you have do you have it for good? Sometimes we can be doing good, but for the wrong reasons. It's kind of like the old politician kissing the baby. They're kissing the baby. That's a great thing. Kissing a baby, showing love to somebody else, kissing a baby. But the politician, the old deal of the politician kissing the baby was not because the baby deserved to be kissed and loved, which it did, but because the politician wanted to endear himself to those who would vote. Okay? And so it's kind of like, sometimes we do good things for the wrong motives. Okay? Sometimes we do good things for the wrong motives. Okay? Those are three of the observations I made with the youth. And so I like to leave with the youth not just the observations of scriptures, but maybe some practical application of scriptures and how to do this sort of things. Because, I can talk about it all day long, but unless I tell them what that means to them personally, it doesn't mean. So what does it mean when I say, don't try to be famous? Don't try to be, just be who you are, be humble. And what does it mean when I say, God examines your heart, so you need to be careful? Okay, here's the thing. We need to take control of our actions and our desires. Are our desires in alignment with God's will? The desires of these people was to disobey God and not spread across the face of the earth, which was his commandment. Okay, so that was the whole desire of what they were doing, was to prevent that. Okay, so number one, in controlling your desires, is to examine your motives. What is my motive for doing this? Is it a motive to please God? Is it a motive to be in God's will? Is it a motive to serve people? Is it a motive to improve? Or is it a motive that is selfish oriented? Is it a motive that uses people? Is it a good motive? Do I have the right motives? Number two, How do you know if you're doing it with the right motives? Just do this little check. Say, does it matter who gets the credit for this? Oh, but it was my idea. I came up with it. I should do the credit. It doesn't matter that the idea was great. You're more concerned with getting the credit than anything. Then your motives may not be in the best place. Okay, so examine. Does it really matter who gets the motive? Does it really matter who gets the credit for serving the homeless, and who gets the credit for solving the homeless issue we have in Odessa? No, it doesn't matter at all. What matters is solving the homeless issue here in Odessa. Does it really matter whether who gets the credit for being the most caring, compassionate person at church? No, that doesn't matter at all. It'd be great to just have a bunch of people in the running, if for being the most caring. It doesn't matter unless you are only concerned with letting God have the credit. See, that's where credit matters. Giving God the credit. Because it's all, number 3, it's all about our attitude. Do we do this for us, or do we do it for God? Do we do it to make a name for ourselves like they did in the Tower of Babel? Or do we do it to glorify the name of God? I'm reminded that here in this little old story about these people in the Tower of Babel, that we see the very purpose of the church. The very purpose of the church is to make a name for God. Let us make a name for God. Let us examine ourselves. Let us examine our church. Let us examine our walk. Let us examine our service. And are we making a name, a good name, for God in the community in which we live? Well, I hope you enjoyed this little sermonette. And just know that we'll have a regular sermon. I'll be starting a new sermon series next Sunday, so you'll see it the Sunday after that. And so I'm excited about that. I have thoroughly enjoyed doing the videos and being in your home and doing those sort of things. And so please give some feedback that you're watching or that you've enjoyed, or even if you don't really care for it, be kind and gentle, but give us some feedback, And so, and maybe just give us a note. It'd be we've been averaging about 200 views, which for us, we were normally running around 60 pre-COVID in worship. So to have 200 views a Sunday is like phenomenal. So why don't you put it on there where you're from? It'd be great to see how far this video is going and what parts of the nation and the world are hearing the gospel proclaimed from Bethany Christian Church. This is your pastor, Greg Morris, saying I love you, and go in peace, Bethany Christian Church.